Everyone has beliefs about the world that they are convinced are true, even though they know somewhere that maybe it's not a factual truth, but it works for them and you believe it. For example, everyday superstitions like I have to wear my favorite underwear if I'm going to pass the exam I'm taking today. So what is going on here? And what can you do when someone in your immediate surroundings has convictions that are a little more influential on their lives and yours than just the color of your underwear? My name is Crystal Vogels and this is the Ship Psychology channel. So how do you deal with people who are utterly convinced in a conspiracy theory? Because that is essentially what I just described. To them it's not a conspiracy theory, to them it is a real way of looking at the world. To them it is as real as the way you see your world. So what happens when you can't see eye to eye? And how is it possible that people that you know are sensible and intelligent, how these people can believe that vaccines are fake? People believe that the moon landing was a hoax. People believe that the earth is flat. People believe that climate change isn't real, or that the world is run by lizard people. And they're truly convinced of this. How does that happen? Well, actually, the psychological mechanism behind that kind of conviction is pretty similar to anything ranging from ye average superstition that, you'll do better on your exam or you'll do better in your job interview if you wear your favorite underwear. You know that the color of your underwear is not going to make a difference in your exam or your interview, at least shouldn't. But you still feel better, feel better capable of handling that stress by wearing your favorite underwear. That is one superstition. There's countless like it. It's the same that drives our religious beliefs. Wait, superstitions, religion, and conspiracy theories? Heaping that together? Well, not really, because they are different each in their own way. But the psychological mechanism behind each is exactly the same, because it has to do with how we as humans handle uncertainty. We are not very good at handling uncertainty. Let's start there. Uncertainty, any kind of uncertainty, feels like a threat to our continued existence. So, we don't like that. And if we can help it in any way, we'll try to reduce our uncertainty as much as possible. And if you live in the time that we live in now, with crises popping up left and right like mushrooms and possibly real mushroom clouds, that's terrifying. And there is so little you can do about it, and we all know that. And that stress, that insecurity, drives people to find security where they can. And at that point, anything that sounds like a plausible explanation, something they can handle, something they can understand, they can see, anything that sounds plausible enough becomes a belief. Why is it that people believe in things that have already been debunked? That science has already said, look, this isn't happening. No, it's not true. It may look true, but it's not true. Horse medication against parasites is not a preventative for COVID. There is evidence. But still people believe that it is. The 5G masks do not cause COVID. They can't even. The radiation, sure, can be dangerous, but not that type of radiation. We can prove it. Still people believe it. Climate change is real. Still people say that it isn't. How is that possible? That has to do with trying to make things understandable and safe for ourselves. Because under stress, the hierarchy of our brain more or less reverses. Wait, what? Well, in one of the first videos of PsychoTrivia, I'll post a link up here, I talked about the three brains. We have the rational neocortex, we have the emotional animal brain, and we have the reptilian brain at the very basis of our brain. Evolutionary, they evolved from the reptilian brain to the animal brain, and finally the neocortex. When we're under stress, that whole chemical and neurological process of fear, of survival, is driven by our reptilian brain. And that can override the later brains. So essentially, when you're afraid, and you'll have noticed this, when you're afraid, when you're nervous or anxious about something, it becomes very difficult to think clearly, to think logically about what are the actual consequences. When you say something that you feel embarrassed about, your first idea may be, oh God, that person must hate me. Oh geez, what will they think? Oh, and rationally you know that that person may not even have noticed that you said something that you find embarrassing. But to you, no, the idea that that person did not notice, now that's completely inconceivable. They had to have noticed. You noticed, so they had to have noticed. And now, and then there's the anxiety. And that's when you notice that your logical brain, so the captain of the ship inside your head, gets sidelined very quickly the moment you are under stress. In some people it happens more quickly than in others, but when you're under stress, when you experience any kind of uncertainty, all the way to outright fear, the first part of your brain to get sidelined is logical thinking. And what you're left with is the animal brain, the first mate of the ship inside your head, who says, what if? Because they are the dreamers, they are the ones with the imagination. So, oh, what if that person now hates me? Oh, what if they're going to tell the entire world? Oh, what if I can never show my face again among my friends? Oh, what if I have to disappear? And that can go very far, those what ifs. Because usually the what ifs, especially the negative what ifs, are countered by the captain, who says, nah, don't worry about that, it's not going to happen. Now, it's going to be okay. They didn't even notice, never mind. Just literally don't mind it. It's going to be okay. And normally your first mate will say, oh okay, if you say so, then okay. If you say so, I'll believe you. Let's keep going. And typically you'll find out that your captain was right. But when you're very scared, your first mate's not going to listen to the captain anymore. Who is listening, however, and who listens much more closely the more afraid you become, that's your deckhand. And your deckhand thinks only in yes or no, safe, not safe. So when there's a situation where you feel insecure, and you feel very insecure, and your captain is no longer heeded, they can, you know that they're right. Logically, you know that there isn't a threat, there isn't a danger, but you feel like there is, and that feeling overwhelms. Then the deckhand gets involved. Your reptilian brain, the one who is all about survival, thinking in the simplest of terms. Here, now, what is safe, what isn't. If it's not safe, you act, you don't think of the consequences, because consequences is not your deckhand's job. Right now, all you want to do is be safe. So you do what's necessary, even if that means not moving. And that's very clear when the danger that you're in is the oncoming car, and your deckhand takes over and says, you two shut up, and you leap out of the way of the car without considering what is the distance, how quickly is it going to be here, or, oh, that's a nice colour. But when the stress is, or the danger rather, is not acute, it's not right here, right now, happening now, it's out there and it's present, but you can't see it, you can't feel it. You know it's there, you see the effects of it, but you can't see it, like you can't see a virus. And you can feel that you perhaps maybe caught something, but what is it? Is it just a regular flu, or is it that coronavirus? And what's happening? Well, I don't know anyone who caught it, so why should I stay in lockdown? Because, well, is there a threat? Is there no threat? I don't know. And in that situation, that's when things get weird. Because in the hierarchy of your brains, your captain, your logical brain, is already patchy. They're not there all the time. But your first mate is still fully functional, and they are scared. So they come up with all the what ifs. What if we never get out of this house? We're in lockdown. What if we never get out? And there's no captain who says, don't worry, this can't go on forever. It may go on for a long time, but the world will still be there. Your friends will still be there. You will still be there when this is over. That voice is no longer there. There's just the first mate. What if this never ends? And the deckhand, who only knows the here and now, who says, either you're right, this is never going to end. Shut down. We're not doing anything anymore. And you turn into yourself, become depressed. Or your deckhand says, screw that, I'm not going to let that happen. That virus isn't real. It can't be. They are just trying to coop us up and it's not real. No way. No way. And that is when people don't wear the masks. That is when people break lockdown. And as a rational thinking person, you can't imagine that anyone would just make light of that kind of threat. You can't imagine that there's people out there who say that climate change is a hoax. Because, well, the evidence is right there, right? Says your captain. But their captain isn't home, is not able to convince the rest of their crew to look at other facts, to look and logically ascertain the situation. Your first mate is scared. Climate change is something that, as an individual, we can't change. It's a problem that affects all of us, but we can't change it. So the first mate feels incredibly helpless. And your captain can say, well, there's small things we can do to contribute. Yes, but that's not going to keep you actually safe. Because if other people don't do it, or other companies don't do it, then what is the point? So the fear continues. And depending on your nature, because temperament is biologically inherent, that's part of our physical makeup, that temperament determines whether your deckhand is going to respond to that, saying, I'm scared, let's not do anything, or whether they flee. No, it's not true, it's not happening, we're not going to do anything about it, no. That's a flight response. Or they say, we're going to, onto the barricades, we're going to fight for this, we're going to do something, and then you get people who are truly militant in their conviction that no, something needs to change. And actually, both responses are scary. To us as a bystander, both responses are scary because this is a deckhand response. This is this person's primary response, saying, no, I don't want to believe this because I can't handle it, so I'm running away, I'm avoiding it. Or they say, no, this is happening, this is real, and we have to fight it, and everyone has to fight it, and I will fight anyone who will not fight with me. If you are not with me, you are against me, and therefore I will destroy you, because that is as simple as the deckhand will think. So having someone in your surroundings who is either a denier of situations or who is a militant defender of the changes that are needed, both can be overwhelming and scary. So what can you, being caught in the middle of that, what can you do? First is to recognize that you see all these nuances, you see perhaps the arguments that they make, that there's some sense to it, but there's also a lot of arguments against it. That means that your captain is still functioning. Your captain is observing this situation and trying to make sense of it, trying to make it logical for you. But if your captain starts to talk to a person who has no captain active because their first mate and especially their deckhand have taken over, everything you say is going to fall on deaf ears because their deckhand and their first mate, they're scared. This is a fear response. And logic does not do well when it comes to changing fears. So what can you do if you can't argue with them? And I'm sure that if you've ever tried, you know that there is no point in arguing with someone who's so convinced that they are right. The only way to get any kind of true dialogue going is by acknowledging that apparently they are afraid. Ask them, show an interest in, okay, what makes you so scared about considering an alternative? What makes you so scared to think that it could be real? And maybe they'll say, I'm not scared, because frightened deckhands will deny that they are afraid, because fear makes you weak, and they don't want to appear weak because they're already so vulnerable. They feel so vulnerable. But ask them, okay, what's the worst about this? If climate change were true, what's the worst about that? And try to get a conversation going that they can share their concerns. And more often than not, you'll find that their concerns are actually that they feel helpless or hopeless to change anything about their situation. And that's why their deckhand comes up. When you, even not with as many words, but if you acknowledge that, okay, this person is simply afraid, that helps them to lower their defenses, because that will lower their stress levels. They feel heard. They feel that maybe if you don't fully understand them, at least you acknowledge how they feel and how they view the world. And that when their stress levels drop, that's when their captain can start getting into the conversation again. And when you hear that, when you start hearing more logical wording, more logical arguments, when you literally start hearing them use more complicated words, longer sentences, then you know that their captain is involved again. And that's when you can offer, still with that scared deckhand in mind, offer them the arguments that you initially wanted to give them, that the way they view things may be different and less threatening than they seem to think right now. And that's how you diffuse conversations like that and diffuse someone who's completely entrenched in their beliefs. There's a lot more to say about this, but that's all for today's video, and I hope to see you in the next one.